8 altar boys disappeared in 1980. What FBI found in the priestess' coffin will haunt you forever. In the heavy air of a sleepy town, whispers of fear echoed down the darkened streets. It was the year 1980 when 8 innocent altar boys went missing, and no one saw a thing. Children, with bright eyes and laughter that could light up the night, vanished into thin air, leaving only questions. How could they simply disappear? The town felt a chill, a sensation creeping down spines like icy fingers. Panic set in, drawing the community into a tight knot of fear, eyes darting, hearts racing. As the investigation unfolded, the FBI uncovered something dreadful: an old priest's coffin nestled behind the school chapel, shrouded in forgotten shadows. But when the lid was pried open, a putrid stench wafted out, an abomination that chilled the bones of everyone who stood witness. What lay inside wasn't what anyone expected. Whoever thought that something so sacred could house the unspeakable? Scraps of fabric, tiny shoes, and fragments of broken toys mingled with the priestess' moldering clerical vestments, striking terror into the hearts of those who dared peek inside. Gasps filled the room as the truth sank in. A shroud of darkness hung over the town, blanketing it in horror. With every passing day, rumors twisted like the clouds in an impending storm. Vague figures were spotted near the church, old men with shadows that stretched longer than their bodies, whispers of rituals and secrets in the dead of night. Why was no one coming forward? What deals were being made in the back alleys? The air turned electric. People were scared to leave their homes, hugging their children close, eyes wide with terror. The community had turned inward, and trust began to fray like old cloth. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But with each revelation came more questions. Who was the priest? Why was he buried with such ghastly offerings? Each day crept by in suspense as investigators scoured the town, but they always came back to that haunting coffin. Then, as autumn leaves began to fall, a faint glimmer of hope emerged. A witness, an old lady who claimed she saw a flicker of light the night the boys disappeared. What did she know? The air thickened with tension as sides were taken, allegiances formed. The hairs on the back of necks stood up. What would they find next in this web of dark secrets? The mystery loomed large, and the hunt was just beginning. The day broke cold and gray, a heavy blanket of clouds looming over the small town like a foreboding witness. The old church bell tolled reluctantly, waking the community from restless dreams filled with shadows and half-formed memories. The story of the missing altar boys had grown roots deeper than anyone could have anticipated, choking the town with fear as the autumn chill set in. Even the laughter of children playing outside seemed muted, swallowed by the dread that clung to every doorstep. As investigators huddled around the church, sorting through the pieces of a puzzle that seemed only to grow more twisted, the old lady, known only as Mrs. Hargrove, stepped forward. Her frail frame trembled, a curl of silver hair framing her sunken cheeks. "I saw them," she whispered, voice shaky but eyes fierce. "Those boys, I saw them that night." A ripple of anticipation ran through the small crowd surrounding her, hearts pounding, hope and fear living side by side. "What do you mean?" one officer urged, leaning closer. "Where?" "They were at the edge of the woods. I saw lights green and flickering. And the chanting." Her words hung in the air, an echo of something ancient and terrible. "They were being called. I thought it was a game." She shook her head, tears spilling down her wrinkled face as her gaze turned distant, haunted by a nightmarish vision. But it wasn't a game. It was something dark. Panic surged through the crowd, eyes darting to the tree line as if expecting shadows to rise from the underbrush. Had the boys fallen victim to something more than mere disappearance? The force of Mrs. Hargrove's truth shook them, and whispers of spectral figures danced among the townsfolk, twining through the fabric of reality like a sinister thread. Memories of unexplainable happenings began to bubble up, strange sounds in the night, fleeting glimpses of figures just outside streetlights, the feeling of being watched when no one was there. The chief investigator, a man with sharp features and a commitment etched onto his brow, spoke. "We need to form a search party. Head for the woods near the church. If there's a lead, we must follow it." But as the town split into groups, an unnerving silence began to settle over the whispers. The woods were known to be unforgiving, the stories of missing pets and strange occurrences pressing down like a heavy weight. Some looked to the skies, murmurs of negligence mounted as people clutched onto hope as tightly as their fear, but dark clouds gathered, shadows slinking across the ground like a whispered promise. And as they ventured into the woods, an unsettling feeling weighed down on them, an invisible pressure that sent shivers racing down their spines. Eyes scanned the trees, searching for signs of the boys, while an unseen presence seemed to laugh at their desperation. Deeper they pushed into the thicket, and with each step, the air turned thick with anticipation. At last, they reached a clearing, a small circle bathed in eerie, shifting light. And there, in the center, stood an altar crafted not of stone but of twisted roots and bones, a grotesque awakening that sent cold dread coursing through their veins. A sudden rustle broke the silence, a figure emerging from the trees, cloaked in shadows. Heartbeats quickened, and chills raced over everyone present. Who was this? Friend or foe? The air tingled, and the stench of something rotten wafted through the clearing. "You shouldn't have come here," the figure hissed, voice like gravel, filled with looming threat. What had they stumbled upon? Could they hold back the dark? With tangled fear and desperate curiosity, they stood on the precipice of revelation, just seconds away from either salvation or the catastrophe that lay waiting. But before anyone could react, the ground beneath them quaked, and a deafening roar sliced through the air. What had awakened in the night? Secrets lay coiling in the darkness, and the hunt now felt like a chase through a waking nightmare. Would they escape the clutches of this darkness, or would it embrace them forever? The roar echoed, a beast unleashed upon the world, vibrating through the very ground beneath their feet. Fear rippled among the group, terror sparking in the depths of their eyes. The cloaked figure loomed ominously, a silhouette against the flickering light, while the altar pulsated like a living entity, feeding off their fear. "Run!" Someone screamed, the word cutting through the air like a knife. And they did. The townsfolk scattered, hearts racing as branches whipped at their faces and roots twisted beneath their feet like the hands of the damned. Panic turned them into shadows racing through the wilderness, desperate to outrun the horror that had stirred. But the figure laughed, a low, haunting sound that echoed through the trees, chasing after them. Liam, just 14, stumbled as terror dimmed his senses. He barely managed to pull himself upright, but the thrill of survival blazed within him. He had to find the boys. They couldn't be lost, not like this. Behind him, the figure drew closer, and with wild determination, he sprinted toward the trees, weaving through the underbrush. "Wait! Liam!" A voice shouted, but he couldn't turn back. Swallowing fear, he pushed forward, feeling like a lone sprinting deer at the mercy of a lurking predator. He broke through the tree line, emerging into a moonlit clearing. The air here was different, thicker, laden with an unshakable dread. He could feel it pressing against his chest, and suddenly he heard it, the faint echo of voices, distant, murmuring like a chorus of forgotten souls. From the shadows, he spotted a half-buried stone with strange markings etched into it. He raced towards it, wiping dirt and leaves off the surface. Could this be the key? The markings glowed softly, pulsing in rhythm with his racing heart. He closed his eyes, focusing. The boys' faces flashed through his mind, laughing, alive, before being swallowed again by darkness. Meanwhile, the others regrouped a few yards away, breathless and wide-eyed. The urgency of the moment knitted their fears into something palpable. "We have to go back for him," whispered Sarah, her hands trembling. "We can't," John said urgently. "We have to find help." The officers, but the woods rumbled again, and the figure stepped closer, removing the hood. Strands of dark hair framed a face twisted with unholy glee. "Help! Oh, they won't come. They can't." A collective gasp spread through the group. The figure was unfamiliar, but in that moment, she felt otherworldly, a separation from humanity. It was as if her mere presence caused a distortion in reality. Panic surged anew, binding them to their spot, like deer caught in headlights. Outside, Liam felt a surge of adrenaline as another layer of urgency washed over him. He needed to protect them. Then he spotted something in the shadows, the faint flicker of lights weaving among the trees, moving back towards the darkness. They flickered and danced with intention, waiting. Those lights. The boys. He couldn't ignore this pull. Without a second thought, he dashed toward the dance of the lights, each step echoing in his ears like a warning bell. "Liam!" He heard their voices, mixed with pleading and laughter. Had they found a way back? A sliver of hope ignited within him. He had to reach them, yet, just as he drew closer, the forest around him seemed to twist and shift, unveiling a new horror. A massive shadow surged past him, blocking the way, a creature born of nightmares and dark reverence. The clearing was stirring again, and in that moment, it struck him with icy realization: they were being hunted, not just for their lives but for something much worse. Would they learn the truth behind the altar or become forever lost in the ancient whispers of the woods? As Liam steadied his resolve, the heavy weight of dread pressed down once more, like a haunting promise looming over them all. The massive shadow loomed before Liam, a hulking mass sown from terror itself. He felt frozen, rooted to the spot as the air thickened with dread. The creature swayed slightly, as if gauging him, its eyes glowing with an unholy hunger. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but he was a deer caught in the glowing gaze of the predator. Behind him, the muffled laughter of the boys faded, replaced by a chilling silence. Liam's heart pounded in his ears, drowning out rational thought. There was no way left to retreat, he had gone too far into the abyss. The forest whispered secrets he couldn't comprehend, but he knew one thing: he couldn't face this darkness alone. Then he remembered the stone. The pulsing markings felt like a lifeline, an anchor in the storm of chaos swirling around him. With a surge of determination, he applied himself to a sprint, dodging branches that seemed to reach out, trying to restrain him. As he plunged through the underbrush toward the glow, he could only hope that it was still there. Meanwhile, Sarah, John, and the others were unable to move, frozen by the dreadful presence that approached them. The cloaked figure's laughter sliced through the stillness like a knife, taunting them. "They won't find their way back. This forest belongs to me now," she cackled, her voice reverberating through the air, wrapping around them like a noose. "What do you want?" Sarah shouted, desperation rising within her throat. The figure smiled, revealing sharp teeth that glinted in the moonlight. "Your fears. Your pain. It feeds the altar, and it craves the lost just like your precious boys." The word "lost" echoed in her head like a spell, a haunting echo that yanked at her stomach. They were tethered to this moment, ripped between the need to fight and the instinct to flee. And as sweat trickled down her back, she thought of Liam lost out there, possibly facing his worst nightmare. There was a crack, a snap of underbrush, and suddenly Liam broke back into the clearing, breathless. He found the stone again, illuminated by an otherworldly glow, beckoning him forward. The markings pulsed with energy, and he reached out, placing his hand on their surface. A wave of heat coursed through him, igniting something inside: a sense of power, a voice whispering in his ear. "Use it." It urged. Liam closed his eyes, summoning everything he had. He imagined the boys, their laughter, their innocence, the lives they deserved. As he focused, he felt the ground shift beneath him, responding to his call. The whispered chorus of the forest rippled, and in that moment, a spark ignited the balance between dread and hope. The cloaked figure arched her back, sensing the shift, and a furious look erupted from her face. "No. You don't get to control this," she hissed, lunging towards him. Suddenly, the stone erupted with light, blinding everyone in the clearing. Liam could feel it, an energy surging, pushing back against the darkness that loomed. The boys' laughter rang out again, louder, filling the air with warmth. "Liam! We're here!" But then the figure shrieked, a piercing sound that curdled blood and shattered the moment of hope. The ground trembled violently, and the branches above creaked ominously, the forest revealing its true nature as ancient roots flared up, ready to claim not just the boys, but them all. "Run!" Liam shouted, but words struggled to escape his lips as terror clawed at his throat. The shadowed figure fought back against the light with all its might, and he felt the stone's power wavering, barely escaping the creature's grasp. The group now faced a choice: confront the ancient evil or flee deeper into the woods where new horrors awaited. The night was far from over, and a decision hung in the air like a ticking time bomb. What happened next would determine not just their lives, but perhaps the fate of countless souls lost to the whispers of the forest. Would they risk everything to delve deeper into the darkness? Or could they find a way to outsmart the very thing that hunted them? Liam's breath came in ragged gasps as he turned to face Sarah and the others, his mind racing. The shriek still echoed in his ears, and a terror he had never felt before gripped his heart. The figure stood there, dark and ominous, unfazed by the light that burst forth from the stone. "Are you ready to join the lost?" she hissed, her voice like ice scraping against metal. With every word, Liam felt the weight of despair settle upon him, threatening to crush him under its heaviness. He needed to act, to push against the urgency of this menace. "Together!" he shouted, trying to rally the group. "We can't." Just before he could finish, the ground convulsed violently again, sending shockwaves through their feet. The roots twisted like serpents, slithering toward them with a mind of their own, hungry for flesh and soul. "Move!" John yelled, grabbing Sarah's arm. With sheer instinct, they all leaped back, scrambling away from the relentless grasp of the dark shadows. They raced into the thicket, branches clawing at them as if the forest itself was alive, eager to ensnare them. The laughter of the boys echoed behind them, but it twisted into something monstrous. "This way!" came a voice that sounded like Tommy's, taunting and unrecognizable amid the chaos. Was it a trick? Or could it be a path to freedom? "Wait! We have to find them!" Sarah shouted, glancing back at the clearing, where the fading light flickered ominously, casting shadows that danced like spirits. "No!" Liam cried, the fear lighting a fire in his chest. "We have to keep moving, or we'll end up just like them." With that, they plunged further into the dark heart of the forest, adrenaline racing against the overpowering fear tightening around their throats. Each footfall echoed the pounding of their hearts, a frantic symphony of panic and desperation. Liam felt the stone pulsing in his pocket, its warmth a reminder of the power it held, the light that had momentarily pushed the darkness back. "It can help us." "It's not just any stone," he said, nearly shouting over the rushing wind. "It's a part of this forest. If I can just figure out how to wield its power, wield it." Sarah said, shaking her head, her voice strained. "What if it turns against us, too? Then we'll figure out together." Liam shot back, his determination flickering like the light they had momentarily lost. As they turned a corner, they skidded to a halt. Before them loomed a massive tree, ancient and gnarled, its trunk twisted and dark as if it held the entire weight of the forest's sins. Carved into its bark were markings that mirrored those on the stone. An eerie glow emanated in circles, drawing them closer, begging for their input. "Liam, this feels wrong," John whispered, glancing around nervously. "Maybe it's a way to fight." Liam countered, adrenaline now drowning out doubt amidst the chaos. "If we can connect the stone to the tree." But as he reached out, a violent gust swept through the clearing. The air thickened, becoming almost suffocating as the cloaked figure appeared again, materializing in the flicker of shadows. Her eyes glowed with rage. "You think you can defy me?" she screeched, a hand raised to the sky, summoning the very roots beneath their feet. With a shout, Liam plunged his hand into the light of the stone, calling upon every ounce of courage he had left. The moment hung in the air, a brief lull before the storm. Would they harness the power that sparkled before them, or would the forest claim them all as it had with so many others in its haunt? What darkness would come next? The answer lay in the pulse of the stone, and whether Liam could wield its strength before it was too late. The moment Liam's fingers brushed the surface of the stone, an electric jolt surged through him. The glowing markings on the massive tree responded, pulsing brighter in rhythm with his racing heart. He could feel the energy coursing through him, and it sent exhilarating chills down his spine. It almost felt like a full embrace of power, but in that same moment, a terrible dread twisted in his gut. Liam! No! Sarah cried, but her voice barely registered over the roaring wind. The cloaked figure surged forward, her form blurring into darkness, but a shimmering beam shot from the stone, cutting through the murk. The figure paused, her expression turning into one of surprise and fury. "Fool!" she screeched, the words slicing through the wind like a bitter knife. "You unleash forces you cannot comprehend." As the light spread from the stone, the roots beneath their feet writhed pitifully, recoiling from the illumination like shadows scared of the dawn. It was mesmerizing and terrifying, but there was something intoxicating about it. The power of the forest, the weight of its ancient history fusing in this moment. "Liam! Do something!" John shouted, his voice thick with panic. The laughter of the boys echoed again, now a high-pitched wail that clawed at their sanity. Each cackle seemed to mock their frantic struggle for survival. "Focus, everyone!" Liam yelled, feeling the energy swirling around him. "We need to channel this. Connect with it." But as he urged, the figure began to move again, her hand weaving through the air as if crafting a spell. An unbearable tension gripped the atmosphere, and Liam felt the temperature drop, a chill wrapping around him like a vice. Suddenly, the ground ruptured beneath them, splitting apart like the maw of a great beast. Liam stumbled backward as the earth gaped wide, exposing a crawling darkness that seemed to pulse with malevolence. The tree trembled as if alive, as if the roots were screaming in silent agony. "Run! Now!" Sarah screamed, pulling Liam away from the edge of the chasm. The forest threatened to swallow them whole, and with every fiber of their being, the group scrambled backward, away from the dark pool of despair that seeped from the crack, but they didn't all make it. John slipped, a foot caught on the jagged edge, and before they could reach for him, he plummeted into the abyss with a horrified cry. "Liam! John!" The scream tore through Liam's throat, raw and desperate. Then the darkness shifted, rippling as if alive. Writhing hands made of shadows emerged, grasping for them, yearning to pull them down into the void. "Liam, we have to go." Sarah's voice cracked as panic flooded her gaze. With a surge of adrenaline, Liam turned back toward the tree, his instincts screaming at him. "We can't just leave him." Before he could stall, the glowing markings flared to life again, and the tree emitted a low hum, an inviting vibration that resonated deep within him. Was it a beacon? A warning? He didn't know, but in that moment, he sensed a choice: grab the stone and follow the light, or stay and risk everything to save John. Liam swallowed hard. The figure was upon them now, her twisted smile revealing a hunger for despair. "Your friend is lost," she hissed, her voice low and sweet like poison. "Join him or perish." "Liam, please." Sarah's eyes sparkled with tears. "We can still find him. We can't leave him." The choice hung there, heavy and grotesque. It was a moment that felt endless, a weight that threatened to crush him. Would he save John, or would he risk it all against the darkness? As the shadows encroached, the glow from the stone began to pulse frantically in his pocket, begging for action. Would it be their salvation, or doom? Liam took a deep breath, wrestling against the whirlwind of fear. When their fates were sewn together by the force of the forest, which path would he choose? "Get ready," he whispered, the weight of the moment pressing against him. What seemed like impending doom loomed before them, and in that chaotic silence, the pull between hope and despair twisted tighter. The answer was brewing. Dark and foreboding. Where would it lead them next? Liam's mind raced as the shadows loomed closer, tendrils of darkness stretching towards him like greedy hands. His heart thundered in his chest, each beat like a drum signaling their doom. John's face flashed in his thoughts: fear, desperation, a plea for help. Was he really gone? Could he still be saved? Liam. Sarah pleaded, her voice trembling. The urgency in her tone snapped him back to the present. With a surge of determination, Liam rushed towards the edge of the chasm, his eyes scanning the darkness. "John!" he shouted, his voice strained. Like an echo swallowed by a void, it vanished into the depths. Panic clawed at him. He knew he had to act, and fast. The tree's hum became a roar in his ears as he pulled the glowing stone from his pocket. Light pulsed from it, bright and unyielding, casting eerie shadows on the ground. Could it help them? There was only one way to find out. Concentrate on it. He yelled at Sarah and the others. Channel the energy. It might be our only chance. Suddenly, the cloaked figure lunged forward. "Foolish boy!" she screeched, more furious than before. "You cannot manipulate what you do not understand." Her words shot through him like ice, but Liam didn't waver. He reached deep within himself, feeling the hum of the tree, the rush of ancient energy weaving around him. Closing his eyes, he envisioned John, battling against the encroaching darkness. "Focus!" he shouted as the light from the stone blazed brighter. He opened his eyes to see Sarah, determination flooding her features. Together, they stood firm, side by side, channeling their fear into the brilliance of the light. Suddenly, the ground vibrating beneath them sent waves of energy into the air, and a blinding beam of white light erupted from the stone. It surged toward the chasm, illuminating the abyss. The tendrils of shadow recoiled, shrieking as the light pierced through and scattered the darkness. "Liam, look!" Sarah urged, pointing down into the abyss. In that instant, amidst the swirling chaos of shadows, they saw him. John emerged, flailing, grasped by the agonizing grip of darkness that clung to him like a shroud. But the light began to lift him, pulling him free like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. "John!" Liam shouted, adrenaline pumping through him. "Hold on!" The figure screamed in fury, shifting back, unable to endure the radiance. "You cannot save him." Her voice trembled as the shadows began to dissipate. But Liam and Sarah pushed forward, focusing their energy, desperate to unite it with the light. As John inched closer, the shadows shrieked, their shape contorting as if resisting. Fear flickered across John's face. Was he slipping away again? There was only a narrow moment before the shadows fell back, but the connection to John sparked bright in Liam's heart. "Reach for us, John!" Sarah cried, tears brimming in her eyes. But as the darkness pulled back, it surged with fury, a final attempt to reclaim its lost prize. The air around them crackled, creating a rift. Something dark loomed behind John, a shadow that seemed to pulse with its own power, desperate to snatch him back. The brilliant light from the stone flickered, nearly snuffed out by the monstrous force. "Don't give up!" Liam shouted, feeling the weight of their desperation. He pushed his will into the stone, feeling the energy shift. "We can save him." Then, with one final surge of power, a wave of light engulfed the chasm, a curtain of brightness crashing down through their fear. In that blinding moment, as expectancy and horror entwined, Liam realized that the battle was just beginning. Whatever they unleashed to save John would not return quietly. The pulse of darkness seemed momentarily halted, but what would the aftermath look like? As the light enveloped them, drowning out all else, a question sparked within him. Had they truly gained the upper hand, or had they released something even more dangerous, the moment of quiet before the storm thundered in his ears? Would they have the strength to face what awaited them? The blinding light washed over them, illuminating the chasm and the twisted shadows in sharp relief. Liam squinted, shielding his eyes until the brilliance dimmed. He could hear the rustling of leaves as the energy of the ancient tree pulsed, a wild rhythm thrumming through the ground beneath their feet. "Is he?" Sarah's voice faltered, the hope in her eyes teetering on a knife's edge. In an instant, the light flickered, revealing John suspended in an ethereal glow, caught between their frantic energy and the consuming shadow. But the darkness wasn't done yet. It surged like a wounded beast, its tendrils lashing out, knocking Liam and Sarah back a step. Liam felt the weight of the world upon him, every ounce of power urging him to push forward. "We can't stop now," he cried out, his breath hitching in his throat. "We have to pull him through." John's face twisted with fear and desperation. "Liam! Sarah!" he screamed, his voice breaking through the chaos. The dark force behind him writhed, pulsating as if alive, grasping for its hold. "Hold on!" Liam shouted again, pouring every fragment of hope into the stone. Beads of sweat collected on his brow, and his hands shook with the effort. When he glanced back, the cloaked figure seemed to melt into the shadows, her presence twisting into the darkness. "This is futile," she hissed. "You think you can defy the void? Its hunger will drown you all." "Shut up!" Sarah shouted back, her voice fierce, cutting through the air. "We know what we're fighting for." But just then, a deep rumble erupted from beneath them, like a beast waking from centuries-old slumber. The ground shook violently, knocking them onto their knees. Liam gritted his teeth, feeling the tremors crawl up his spine, the darkness swirling as if to mock their fear. I can't hold him." John gasped, the shadowy clutches pulling him back. The brilliance of the light flickered, teetering on the brink of extinction. "Believe!" Liam cried, forcing the light into a raging torrent. They needed that connection, that thread linking them. Reminding themselves of who they were fighting for, suddenly, Sarah's voice pierced through the chaos, low and steady. "Think of the good times, John. Remember us. Remember life." In a heartbeat, a spark ignited within them, a shared memory that wove their hearts together. Laughter under the stars, whispered secrets by the creek, the bond that forged them against all odds. The light pulsed again, brighter and warmer, but the shadow was relentless. It coiled tighter around John, tightening the grip like a vice. "You have unleashed something you cannot contain." The figure shrieked, her voice filled with maddening glee. With a sudden surge of energy, Liam and Sarah clasped hands, drawing all their hope, their pain, and their will into one concentrated push. Together. They shouted as one, their voices intertwining with a fierce determination. Then, without warning, the stone erupted with white-hot brilliance, a beacon in the darkness, but just as it lit the way, a piercing scream erupted from John, a raw, agonizing sound that pierced the air. The shadows twisted, recoiling in fury but pulling back to reclaim their lost grip. "I can't hold on." John's voice dwindled, echoing through the abyss. A spiraling burst of darkness exploded from his body, and then, in a heart-stopping moment, it unleashed an echo that summoned the shadows like a swarm of angry wasps. Liam's heart sank, dread gripping him. The rift widened, its gaping maw hungry and fierce, and the last flicker of their shared light flickered dangerously. As shadows fought against the light, another thought crossed his mind, a terrifying realization that sent chills cascading down his spine. What they unleashed wasn't merely a shadow, it was something far older, something that wanted to consume everything, and as the fight spiraled with ferocity and pain, a ghostly whisper slithered through the air, echoing ominously. "You should never have summoned me." The darkness began to converge, feeding on their energy, and as guilt laced Liam's thoughts, it echoed like a warning. What have we done? Would their desperate attempt to save John cost them everything? The shadows convulsed around them, each tendril whipping like a serpent, striking at the edges of the light. Liam's heart thundered in his chest, a drumbeat of fear mingled with relentless hope. He glanced at Sarah, her face a mask of determination. "We can't let him go." With one final effort, Liam poured everything into the stone again. "Come back to us, John," he roared, his voice cutting through the chaos. The light flared, illuminating grotesque shapes that writhed like a fever dream. But it only seemed to provoke the darkness further, its monstrous form creeping closer, eager to consume them all. Stop! John shouted, a mix of terror and defiance in his voice. You don't understand. It wants to take you too. Liam's breath hitched. What if John was right? What if their struggle only fed the very beast they sought to conquer? The thought clawed at him, but retreat was not an option. No. We're not leaving you. The ground shook again, stronger this time, as if the earth were protesting their meddling. Liam could feel the roots of the ancient tree beneath him, thrumming with warning. It was alive, and it knew the danger. The shadows climbed higher, forming a wall, a dark trap closing in on their desperate light. Focus! Sarah urged, her voice piercing through the growing din. Remember the joy. Remember us. With a fierce grip, they squeezed their hands tighter, their palms slick with sweat. They needed to channel their love for John into something tangible, something that could push back, something that could banish the shadows. The memories flooded in John's laughter, the way he would dance around the campfire, bright-eyed and wild with enthusiasm. They thought of the times they'd ventured into the woods as kids, the way the world felt boundless and theirs. They thought of the nights spent under an endless sky, sharing dreams. The light flared again, an explosion of raw energy that momentarily pushed the shadows away, revealing the depths of the chasm. For a heartbeat, it felt as if time paused. Everything hung in suspended animation, a breath held tight in the chest, hope gleaming against despair, but then it struck, a monstrous growl that echoed through the void, a sound so deep it reverberated in their bones. The darkness lashed out, snapping at them like an animal starved for flesh. It swept Liam and Sarah back, their fingers slipping from John's grasp. The connection frayed, a taut rope that finally gave way. No! Liam shouted, crashing onto the ground as darkness engulfed Sarah, her last look one of defiance mixed with terror. Liam, I'm John's voice was cut off, lost in an overwhelming void as the shadows wrapped around him, suffocating, breaking their bond. Suddenly, silence fell, heavy and daunting. The echoes of chaos faded, replaced by a breathless stillness that sent shivers racing down Liam's spine. He lay there, heart racing, pulse pounding, feeling utterly alone. Then, a flicker of movement arose from the corner of his eye. The cloaked figure, swirling with shadows, stepped into the light, twisting her face into a ghoulish grin. Isn't it beautiful? She crooned, her voice low and seductive. You've opened the gate. You've invited me. Liam's blood ran cold. What did she mean? What had they truly unleashed? Desperation clawed at his insides, and with the darkness now behind him, he had to save them, save John, save Sarah, save himself. And then he saw it, lurking at the edge of the light, a glimmer of hope, a tiny fragment of the stone pulsing with warmth. Could it still work? Could it be their salvation? Just as he reached for it, a shriek filled the air, one that sent his heart crashing deep into his stomach. You made a mistake. This is only the beginning. With that, darkness closed in around him once more, threads of hopelessness wrapping tighter as the chasm churned beneath his feet. What new horrors would the shadows bring? Would they ever get John and Sarah back? The unanswered questions hung heavily, a promise of dread lingering in the air. The forest pulsed with malevolence as Liam found himself alone, shadows wrapping around him like a twisted shroud. Fear clawed at his throat, burning deep as memories of Sarah and John tightened the grip of dread. They had fought so hard, and now he was left to confront the dark specter that sought to steal their lives away. No! He roared into the murky darkness. He had to move. He had to act. The pulse of the stone in his pocket breathed hope into his resolve. With fierce determination, he grasped it tightly in his hand, feeling the warmth radiate, a life force against the icy grip around him. The cloaked figure stood before him, twisted and menacing, eyes glowing with malicious delight. It's too late, boy. You've unleashed what can never be contained. Her voice slithered through the air, wrapping around him like smoke, stinging his lungs. No. Liam shot back, heart racing. I want to let you take them. The stone in his hand flared brilliantly, light bursting forth and forcing the darkness to retreat ever so slightly. Just then, a chilling echo of laughter filled the air, a mocking reminder of his friends lost to the night. "Liam!" They cried out, voices intertwined, piercing his heart with desperation. Each sound pushed him forward. With every ounce of strength, he imagined their faces, their laughter, the joy they shared before this nightmare. The power surged within him. This was not just a part of the forest, it was a part of him. He felt the connection of their memories, moments that transcended the darkness creeping in. Together. He shouted, pulling that shared strength, that bond they had forged over years. Light burst from the stone, blinding in its intensity, flooding the clearing and sending the figure stumbling back. The laughter morphed into unity, building strength, igniting something primal within the forest itself. "See how your love strengthens," the figure hissed, her face contorted with rage. But the shadows writhed at the edges of the light, reluctant to touch its warmth. "You cannot win." But Liam refused to relent. "I'm not alone. I have them." He thrust his hand forward, channeling everything he had into that radiant light, hope, fear, desperation into one fierce pulse. With a crack like thunder, the light surged, cascading through the trees, illuminating the darkness. For an eternal moment, it felt as if time stretched impossibly, allowing him to glimpse Sarah and John, fleeting and distant, trapped yet fighting, their eyes stark with fierce determination. "Hold on!" he shouted, feeling a heat swell within him. He remembered the way they all laughed, the mischief they shared, the bond that had made them inseparable in even the darkest nights. "This ends now." In a blinding explosion, the light expanded, sweeping away the shadows and forcing the figure further back. Screams of rage filled the air as the darkness writhed before the brilliance. Liam pushed forward, heart pounding, knowing this was the moment. But then, the screeching figure lashed out, a hand of darkness extending toward him. "Your defiance shall be your undoing." Liam again called upon the memories of his friends, their faces, their hearts entwined. "No!" he screamed defiantly, summoning every shred of strength. Barriers of light crackled around him, locking out the encroaching shadows. With one final push, he directed the light directly into the heart of the darkness, the only true source of its power. The impact was fierce, an explosion of sound and light that shook the ground beneath him. The momentary lurch left him breathless, and all around him, the presence of darkness fractured, cracking like brittle glass beneath the force of their bonds. "No! You cannot stop this!" the figure screamed, her form dissolving, as shadows lashed at the retreating light. But it was too late. Liam felt the energy shift within him, a flow connecting him back to Sarah and John. The air quivered as the darkness was drawn toward the light. The laughter of the boys drowned out the figure's cries as their spirits radiated a brilliance that pierced through the murky veil. Light surged forth, consuming the shadows, unraveling their twisted forms. "Liam!" came their voices, resounding like a chorus, bright and unstoppable. Then, finally, the dark figure shrieked in rage, a last futile gesture as the light enveloped her. And just like that, the shadows collapsed into themselves. A sudden silence fell, and the forest sighed as if releasing ages of pent-up despair. Liam hesitated, breathless. Had it truly worked? With trembling legs, he stepped forward into the clearing, heart racing with hope. Sarah. John. A shimmering blur broke through the remaining haze, figures emerging with intertwined smiles that chased away every ghost of fear. There they stood together, free. "Liam!" they cried out, and in that moment, the weight of despair lifted. "I thought," he began, hesitant joy blooming from despair. "We knew you'd find us," Sarah replied, her eyes sparkled like stars returning after the darkest night. A wave of relief washed over him, the darkness finally shattered. From the corners of the woods, something shifted, a clearness settled like fog lifting after a storm. They were free. The lost were returned, and as they embraced tightly, the warmth of their togetherness illuminated the once dreary woods. The ancient trees breathed, sighing relief as if acknowledging the truth of what was restored. No darkness could contain what they held, the strength they carried, not just for themselves but for those lost. Hope had triumphed as dawn painted the horizon. They ventured out of the woods, hand in hand. Freedom sparkled in their shared laughter, the sun breaking gently through the trees. They would remember, and they would heal. And together, they vowed to drive out the shadows, to keep the darkness at bay, and never let its taint settle in their hearts again. But as they emerged into the golden light, a whisper danced through the trees, echoing softly yet hauntingly, as if the darkness had only retreated, but not vanished. Every light casts a shadow. Yet for now, they sustained their hope in the warmth of new beginnings. It was time to tell their story. Now, you need to subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories we'll share. Smash that like button now to help the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand how important it is to support the channel through these actions.